Hey everyone. May give people some time to filter in, but just got back from seeing uh, Black Panther 2, or I guess Wakanda Forever. Not exactly super thrilled with it, but we can get into that. So let's give the intro video a go and we'll get going. All right. So I'm going to give people a couple more minutes to filter in, but in the meantime, uh, it's nice to meet you all. And if you're watching on a replay, thanks for giving the show a little bit of a chance. Uh, it's been pretty fun so far. Still a little rusty with this sort of video production stuff, but we're getting there. Uh, Finally upgrading some gear too. So let's see. I'm just going to go over some of the basics of it in about a minute or so here. See if there's any commentary going on online. I want to see what the average reaction is. I've kind of avoided it up until this point. Uh, hmm. How are you all doing tonight? Uh, or on the replay? Still interested too, if that's the case. We're doing pretty well. It's great to go out and actually watch something new. Sleepy and I, as you know, have been, or as you probably don't know because you're new here, uh, do our weekly, well, bi-weekly with him, weekly with me live streams. But those have been on older films and also Rings of Power, which of course, uh, not exactly my favorite, but we'll get to that later. Another stream. All right, so I guess we'll get to the basic initial spoiler-free thoughts. Uh, it was not exactly the most exciting movie. Uh, in fact, as somebody who tries to respect the art of cinema, this is the first film I've ever felt the freedom to get up and use the restroom at some point because you can kind of tell what direction the scene was going. Um, my biggest concern with this film was something along the lines of being too disrespectful or kind of being predatory with the use of the death of Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace. Uh, it was sometimes teetered on the edge of it, but for the most part, I think it was pretty respectful. I don't think they went too far over the line. Now, the rest of the movie, on the other hand, I'm not entirely sure why they thought this was fine to release at this point. I feel bad for the special effects artists. If you're the kind of person who goes to a movie like this for the fight scenes, it's very unlikely you'll have enjoyed anything out of that. And the things that are in there, you've seen better in other places. It's very strange to see a movie come out where, especially from Marvel, who's had a history of relatively good films, although up for debate recently with the last stuff since Infinity War. I personally, at least, thought the Spider-Man film was great. Oops, apologies for the desk. um, but generally speaking, I think this film kind of ended up ripping off the action scenes from quite a few spots. Um, there was a lot of what felt like references to Avatar: The Way of Water coming out. Like they watched the trailer. Do you guys remember those movies that came out back in the 2000s that were all parodies? Disaster movie or not scary movie. Scary movie was like the good one, but the rest of them, and where they just have something that felt like maybe they watched the trailer of something and made a parody of it or took the style of it. That's kind of what it felt like with some of the footage of the underwater stuff. Uh, as far as the general style of it goes, most of the film seemed to be shot pretty poorly. It was very flat, non-dynamic shots. The CGI would go into slow-mo quite often for fight scenes, but not in a way that made it feel like they're trying to put emphasis on something. More like it felt as though they were trying to uh, not spend as much money on special effects. And if you know anything about the way Marvel's gone lately, I think it's pretty obvious that that's what's going on. Even Thor Ragnarok, which had a little bit better production in that way, they ended up the director ended up mocking the effects artist, which is terrible. And there's been articles have come out about how they've been kind of mistreated. As far as the storyline goes, there were interesting ideas, but nothing I would think needs to be told in this format, and nothing that feels particularly special. Um, they obviously were in a bit of a bind with the death of the former star. What were you going to do exactly? Certain characters grew on me over the last film. I kind of have a middling opinion of Black Panther in general, but I think I really like Chadwick Boseman's portrayal of the character. That character's great, especially like in Civil War, which is probably not a controversial opinion at all, but it's still true. And as far as everybody else, I think my favorite actor is probably the one who plays M'Baku. I forgot his name. I'm terrible with names in general, but he's pretty good. And surprisingly, I thought some of the actress who plays Shuri, some of her work was very good. I'm impressed, especially considering I'd seen her work previously and wasn't a huge fan. Um, but unfortunately, that's not to be said of the person they cast for Riri Williams or Ironheart, which you've seen in the trailers. She unfortunately does not have really much of a range at all. She's kind of stuck in almost a comic relief role, and her jokes are often really poorly timed, and the way she delivers them are not great. The poorly timedness of the jokes is obviously not on her. That's not fair to say. But for the rest of it, it's a little unfortunate. I hope I'm sure she'll get better as time goes on. She's probably relatively young as well. And maybe that's the case with the Shiri actress as well, because she did pretty well in comparison to her first outing. Age helps everybody. I just hope that all these people can find their roles in films that are maybe a bit better written and maybe just a little bit more well thought out. But we'll get into that in a little bit. I wait until about 10 minutes in before I put spoilers up, just so you all know. Other thoughts on this. The sound design was very sparse, and it was intentional as far as I can tell, but not a good choice. It really seemed as though uh, they just kind of forgot that you need certain amounts of sound. There was maybe one track in the soundtrack that I thought was decent for a tiny bit of it, but otherwise, there's not a whole lot to be said about it at all, which is a little disappointing considering the roots you could pull from for this. It felt almost stereotypical, some of the ways they try to use the music, and obviously they're trying to market a certain demographic that's not me, which is fair enough. But it's kind of produced by uh, people who aren't the target demographic, so I feel it's fair to criticize them a little bit in that way. I think they are unfortunately kind of projecting something that maybe just doesn't work properly, which is, it's up to everybody else to decide if that's worthy or not. But I think it's not necessarily a problem. Um, but I don't think you'd want to buy the soundtrack to this whatsoever, and I'm not sure I would ever want to watch it again. It was a exhausting experience, not because there was a lot going on, but because there was so little going on. I've never been so tired in the middle of film, and then the moments where they led up to the official conflict and the conflict itself, it felt strange, as if they knew they had to get to this point, but they weren't sure how to do it well, and because of it, I think some of the subtext of the film gets a little muddled, and the message they're trying to give across just doesn't quite work. But I think that was also a problem with Black Panther 1, and that seemed to go over fine with most people, so you never know. I'm pretty sure this film will do at least well at the box office, but we'll be criticizing the actual production here because that's what I care about. Leave the money to the money people. Let's see. Hmm. Yeah, give it a few more minutes. As far as let's see. There was no end credit scene, but I think that's fair enough given how they ended this film. or rather, it's wrong to say there's no second end credit scene. There's a mid credit scene that kind of just continues on from the end of the film, which I won't get into right now. Um, but that was, I suppose, as tastefully as you could probably handle the death of an actor who you weren't expecting to die, obviously, and they didn't manipulate, at least not in the way that or rather, if they manipulated, it was ineffective. I personally think that something like as terrible as this is, don't tell anybody I said this, but I think Fast and the Furious 7 might have done that kind of death a little bit better. Don't scream at me, please. That's just what I think. But yeah. Otherwise, I'd say if you're just coming here for a quick impression, the film is probably about a as much as numbers are kind of arbitrary, I'd probably say it's about a 3 on my scale. My scale is -10 to +10. Uh, 3 is not a super low score. It's a well, it was entertaining enough. -10 is so bad it's good. Like it's amazing, and 10 is it's not so great. Or 10 it's no 10 it's the best thing ever. But 0 is the most offensive thing a film could be, which is boring. And I'd say it's 3. There's some things of value here. I wouldn't exactly say it's worthless. I think I'd want to know where they spent some of their money, but at the end of the day, what are you gonna do? I think, I think if you're a really big Marvel fan who likes Marvel for the action, you're not gonna like this film all that much. If you're somebody who wants decent character writing, there are 1 or 2 plot lines that you may follow all right. Uh, as somebody who really likes the character of Namor from the comics, because he follows in sort of a mythic tradition, I don't think he's necessarily um, done well at all. And you can tell that a lot of the changes they made were done purely because they don't have the full rights to the character. I think you can go at least if you're at least 25% off model, then you can kind of get around rights issues. Okay, but now here's the fun part. We'll go in and discuss the plot properly. Time for spoilers. So, the film opens with Chadwick Boseman's character, obviously T'Challa, unfortunately, is passing away from an illness, um, and they kind of leave it vague in the film, but obviously the reference to real life health issues, and so that scene continues on, and it's a little dramatic. It felt a little forced, though. The way that they paced it, there was not much you could really do about that. I think he obviously passes away and then passes on to the queen, and then we got to a scene that I thought could be very interesting, which is Wakanda at the new at the world conference, I think, at the UN, and there I thought it would be interesting to see a film about Wakanda trying to deal with international interests, and I think that was probably a direction they were going to go with the film initially, but they changed it up quite a bit. At least it feels like they changed it quite a bit because there's an emphasis on it in the first half of the film that doesn't really follow up later on. It's kind of used as an outside pressure to stoke the conflict between Wakanda and oh, I forgot what it's called, but Namor's kingdom in this film, or Namor, I guess, because he had to be 25% off model. But as far as the rest of the plot goes, it's just following along with the sadness and everything. We cut over to very obvious, stereotypical kind of evil people, business, CIA, SEALs, Navy SEALs, all that kind of thing. And they're using a machine that can find vibranium, and that's what brings the aquatic folk out of the water. And they go out and kill everybody on that thing and steal the machine that can find vibranium because it drew them to their kingdom. And we go on from that. At that point, there's a conflict because the CIA kind of thinks that it's the Wakandans that did it because, vibranium, yada, yada. It's a little forced, the conflict on that side of things, because the government's like, "Oh, we need to declare war on Wakanda," which is a little silly. That comes a bit later in the film, but that's where this plot line eventually goes. And considering what everybody knows about Wakanda in this film, it doesn't make any sense for them to do this. As far as um, the conflict of the film in general, it's on a couple fronts. It's the queen having to deal with the new power that she has and mourning the loss of her child. At least, yes, I believe that's a relationship. Don't kill me. I haven't watched that film for a while, and it was kind of hard to tell. In this one, I'm pretty sure it was her son, and and then Shuri not wanting to take on the mantle of Black Panther, which you know, controversial for some people. I think I could see the arc working, but I also think it was a little forced, and I think there was at least some respect paid to the fact that she was not exactly ready for a leadership position later on in the film. Uh, and I'm kind of glad because M'Baku is a much more interesting character in my book. I think he's a very good, fun guy to watch on the screen. The actor has a lot of charisma. I'm sorry I don't know your name, man, but you do a good job. As far as everybody else, serviceable. I think, unfortunately, some of the they're not Atlanteans. It's gonna kill me. 1 second, I gotta look it up. I can't look for the name. See, I'm not good with the names. That's gonna be a problem going forward in general. Oh yeah, no, I guess they're just Atlanteans. I was like, oh, it can't be just Atlanteans. That's not possible. But no, nope, that's the case. So yeah, the Atlanteans had some interesting designs. I appreciated one of the enforcers, and also Nowara, who is I think sort of a daughter of his in a way, but all of his people are his children. It's one of those things. I think it's very strange of them to kind of hijack um, Mayan myth when that's already in Marvel canon. I know why they did it on a meta level. They wanted to kind of tie in things a little bit better as far as uh, oppressed peoples and that kind of conversation, and that's handled very clunkily. And I think it was a wasted effort here. They and the subtext of some things is just a little strange. I think they didn't really think through the optics of of uh, people crossing over borders and all this yada yada. I won't get too much into it, but I think if you watch the film with that kind of eye, you can go, wait a second, not entirely sure what you're doing here. But I think they're not entirely sure what they're doing here, so I think that's forgivable, even if the lack of quality writing isn't exactly. Let's see. As far as what happens next, generally moves along. We move on towards the conflict, and that conflict goes on. Not it starts like, oh, we're friends, welcome to my kingdom, and then the queen actually causes it, which is interesting. She causes the conflict by ordering her the princess to be saved by any means necessary. Uh, re Oh yeah, before that, I'm skipping over a whole segment. The recruitment of Riri Williams, who is Ironheart, who has a very, very poorly animated Iron Man suit and a sequence that is directly ripped off the 2008 Iron Man show movie. It's not a good good look to do what other people did, but worse. It's you see why they're doing it. They're trying to connect. It's like, oh, it's poetry or whatever, but it doesn't work. It falls flat. And if you're somebody who knows it, it's been what 16. Yeah, not quite 16, but it's been a long time since since Iron Man came out, and so to return to it in that way with that sequence just didn't feel all that right. Uh, the car chase in this film was much worse than the one in just the previous film, even. So it feels as though Marvel might be hitting some sort of weird budgetary restriction. which is unfortunate, but uh, makes sense considering some of the content they're putting out recently. Don't worry, someday I'll probably talk about She-Hulk. I know you're all waiting for the opinion. um, but in general, I think, let's see, what else? There's a bunch of nothing plot about conflict. The CIA kind of resolves it itself with uh, what's his name? I only know him as Watson from Sherlock. Uh, Whatever his name is, Martin Freeman. Martin Freeman, his character, because he's in a contract as far as production goes, and so they need something for him to do. Uh, let's see. It continues on, and so eventually, uh, Riri Williams is in. Uh, they're both captured. The princess and or Shuri, I should say, and Ironheart are captured by the Atlanteans after a really boring fight and taken to there. And that's when they're, and that's eventually what leads to what I was talking about earlier with the rescue that leads to the death of some of the Atlanteans and a scene, what seen by Namor or Namor as a attack on his people, which it is. It was not a very well thought out thing. You can see why they do it in character, so I'm willing to handle it a little bit, even if it is a very stupid choice, very poorly thought out. Especially considering we've seen in the film itself that character of the Queen having a much more level head and producing better results. But anyway, let's see. Moving on, uh, it leads to an attack on Wakanda, which I believe everybody's seen in the opening, like teaser sort of stuff for this film, where sirens in the water, grenade thrown down. I know this is going to be a controversial opinion, but I really did like seeing Namor. I'm just going to call him Namor. It's fine. He's his name is the boy who is without love, is what it translates to allegedly in this, which is a really bit of a stretch and a weird kind of like ex post facto way to name a character, but whatever. Um, Given to him by Spanish uh colonizers, I suppose, but not really. He takes they call him the one without love, but then he takes it and turns it into a name, which is more like you're giving yourself it. I think I wouldn't necessarily say he was given it. Let's see. As far as things go, that scene is fun enough. But the thing that I just sidetracked myself from is talking about the fact that I actually really like seeing Namor fly around with the little wings on his ankles. That felt at least comic booky. Look, I'm stretching here. I know, but I did like seeing that. I wish you'd see that more, and maybe wish you could see a movie about like the Greek gods or the Roman gods, like Hermes with the little wings and whatever. And I think that'd be fun. Unfortunately, you won't. Uh, but no, I know most people are probably not going to like that. I can already tell. But I think it was funny. It was fun to watch. At least that. But the rest of the action was you've seen it better in films in this franchise itself. You've seen much better action elsewhere, and so I wouldn't recommend going to this film for that at all. As far as what happens after that, they go and fight him in the ocean, but to lure him to the desert, and there's a conflict there. Goes on about as long as you'd expect. Shuri becomes Black Panther after fighting it the whole time. Uh, her she goes on the when her spirit. I guess what would you call it? I guess a spirit quest. She goes to the astral plane, where you go to meet the ancestors. She meets Killmonger there, which is she's obsessed with vengeance and anger. And there's dialogue earlier in the film about her being her wanting to see the world burn, which is something she kind of shares with Namor for a little bit, although they both kind of move past it, I guess. What a waste of Namor, I think. And there's someone that he's a very he's a much better character than what they show in here. And I'd wager to say that most characters in the comics are probably better than what they show in the film here. I know adaptation requires some sacrifices, but he's a very complex character, and this Namor is complex enough as well, but just not in ways that I think will lead to anything lasting or interesting. I know they cut this phase short, and so this is kind of the capstone of this phase of Marvel, this kind of post Infinity War or post Endgame phase. So it's not exactly a high note you want to end on. It's a little unfortunate, but what are you gonna do? Let's see what else. That fight goes. I didn't. I felt really terrible with that last fight, to be honest. We I think the film brings us to and this is intentional to some extent, but I think they really make Shuri look like a horrible person with the way she kind of tortures Namor, at least to, and maybe it's just me. Maybe I didn't like seeing that character be tormented any more than being put in this film anyway. So I'm willing to admit that maybe that's just me. I can't say that that's definitively bad. In the film, there's a lot of talking that leads to nothing. They really try to make words mean something, and I've not mentioned Riri Williams' character much, uh, that character in general, because she's very much so just a MacGuffin. She's a plot device. She's not a real character, and I feel a little bit bad for the actress. Maybe that's why she didn't put in her A game, because as far as I can tell, it's not it's not a great role, and I'm not entirely sure how they're expecting to compel people to watch some sort of solo project with her after this. But who knows? I could be in the wrong. I'm willing to admit that maybe that character's more interesting than I thought, but I think she's going to be viewed as just derivative, um, and it seems a little tacky to shoehorn her into this film. Uh, I think that wasn't the right space for it. I would have probably gone with something else and let her have her own solo project. But it is the way of Marvel and DC and all these large cinematic universes to kind of interconnect everything in that extreme of way. Let's see, and so the film ends. The end credits sequence that we're talking about earlier is when King T'Challa's wife, uh, Shuri goes to visit her on Haiti, where she's been. Uh, she was the one who caused the trouble earlier, but we'll continue on from this point because it doesn't matter so much now. She she has the son of T'Challa, and it's eventually really revealed that his Wakandan name is T'Challa. So T'Challa. So they're building a nice little connection there. Maybe, and I thought it was as nice as you could do for a little bit of a send up. But at the end of the day, this film is not one that I would recommend rushing out to see. I think you could wait, maybe get a matinee ticket, maybe wait till it's on streaming because you know it's going to get on streaming eventually, especially with the way Marvel is now with their shows on Disney Plus. So I'd think in your best interest, just wait. No need to rush out to see this. Uh, I think who knows? Maybe they'll be like Cats. Maybe they'll put out a post release patch and fix some of the CGI issues and maybe um, make the sound a little more dense, so to speak, uh, because the sparseness and it, you know, it could be that they're going for a stage play sort of feel, which I would not advocate for. I know there were some people who described Black Panther as being Shakespearean, and but I don't that wasn't in reference to the play like design of it. It was in reference to the structure of the characters. And I wouldn't agree with that take either, but since I know it was one that was passed around a lot, I think they could have drawn from it and maybe taken the wrong message. So don't do that. Maybe frame things a little better. At some points, it kind of felt like a Wes Anderson movie without any talent because people were just center frame. And it was not quite completely squared off, but it was in such a way that it just didn't look great. I wouldn't recommend doing a film like that. but you know, they make money. So, but maybe not as much money now, and definitely not as much money as the first Black Panther. There's no way this reaches the same mark. I'm gonna uh, put my cap on that one. I don't think it'll get anywhere close. It hasn't captivated the audience in the same way. It hasn't had such a what would be what would be most well described as a forced social moment with the advertising for the original Black Panther. I think I think this won't have as big of a staying power, but that's true of Marvel in general now. Marvel is not exactly holding people's attention the same way it did. It takes very special things like the bringing back of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, of course. Sam Raimi, he's not the actor, but you know what I mean. Uh, yeah. So, all right. Uh, I'll wait for a few minutes to see if anybody has any questions, any comments they want to leave, and if not, then I suppose we will head out here. It's been good practice at the very least. I'm glad this is getting a little bit more natural for me. What I do need to learn is to keep a water bottle closer to me because my throat is starting to dry out. Uh, oh, right here. Give me a second. All right. Well, since it looks like there are no real comments coming in, I thank you for watching it in the rewatch. And if you do watch it in the rewatch, please be sure to leave a comment. I'm very interested in hearing what people have to say. This is just my fresh take. I don't have any animosity towards this film, but I don't have any excitement for it either, and I think that's true for most people. But I am interested in hearing why somebody liked it or why they didn't like it. Leave a like; it really helps me grow. Subscribe if you can, so I maybe have a bit more time to dedicate towards this, and I'd be very happy to improve my craft in such a way. Uh, Thank you for watching. I look forward to chatting with everyone next time. I will see you all, I guess, Sunday at 2 p.m. for the stream with Sleepy for Sorcerer. Oh, and before I forget, on Thanksgiving, I'm planning on doing a mostly all day stream. I'm going to have little segments recorded if I can get in contact with certain people and keep it all day going, just in case some of you don't have any family or friends that you're hanging out with the holidays. I wanted to be there just in case. Um, it'll be fun, good practice. Not a charity stream, I can't even make money off of it, but I look forward to maybe seeing some of you there. I'm going to keep mentioning that, and I will see you all on the flip side. Stay copacetic.